Hello, welcome to Lenny's Life Lessons. This is a discussion on parenting. Today's discussion is on discipline, to spank or not to spank. These discussions are intended purely for educational purposes. I offer private, individual, and group counseling and coaching sessions in person, by phone, and over the internet. Please visit my website, lennylondon.com, for information about these services. My mission is to serve to advance you in living your life even more powerfully, richly, and joyfully. Subscribe if you haven't already to these educational discussions on various topics, posted here by noon 5 days a week. Spanking versus not spanking has been debated for decades, and spanking has come under fire more and more. As we mature as a nation, we come to recognize that there are other, more effective, less costly ways to discipline our children. Pro-spankers' arguments sometimes come across as if spanking is the only way to discipline, and perhaps it is the only way they know. It surely is the easiest way. Spanking takes less time and effort than other forms of discipline, at least in the moment, although not necessarily in the long run. Let me make this absolutely clear. No spanking does not mean no discipline. It just means using other forms of discipline. There is no question that no discipline at all, or even little discipline, is not good for your child. Neither is too much or too rigid discipline good for your child. For healthy, happy, powerful children, discipline is required, but spanking is not. It is not only not the best form of discipline, it is the worst, or at least one of the worst, for many reasons. Powerful parenting is about instilling a very strong, healthy sense of self in your child and maintaining your power as a parent. How is instilling a healthy, strong sense of self in your child accomplished? By raising a hand against the child. Close your eyes for a second and imagine someone coming at you to hit you. Go ahead and do it. And notice how you feel. Don't you feel belittled, powerless, or angry? Don't you want to hit back? Is that how you want your child to feel? And feeling that way, what is the child being taught? Nothing more than might makes right. Whoever's bigger and stronger makes the rules. No wonder there's so much bullying going on among children. Spanking suggests also that hitting is how you solve your problems, and whoever's bigger and badder gets to make the rules. It does not teach anything else. Is this what you want to teach your child? Example, a 4-year-old wanted candy she'd taken from her mother's purse. Mother told the child she could not have the candy, so the child threw the candy and hit Mom in the head with it. Mom spanks child. Now, how does that make sense? Teach a child not to hit by hitting. How does that work? Real discipline teaches something constructive. I'm going to come back to this later. Another problem with spanking is it does erode self-esteem. Close your eyes again and imagine someone hitting you. What does that do for your self-esteem? Imagine that someone hitting you, someone's supposed to be loving you and protecting you and taking care of you, and they're hitting you. Does it make you feel safe, powerful, and good about yourself? Does it make you feel that you're a precious person to the person who is hitting you? Some people say spanking works, but does it really? Maybe the behavior stops for the moment, but does it stop for good? For instance, throwing things. Maybe the child who got spanked for throwing candy at her mother won't do that again. But will she never throw anything else? Will she never throw a toy at a smaller child when she's frustrated or hit instead? Generally, bad behavior that seems to be stopped due to spanking is simply redirected into other bad behavior, or the bad behavior continues and the child gets better at hiding it from the spanker, because nothing of value was taught by spanking. Another potentially serious problem with spanking is that it's usually done in anger. And even if the spanker never overdid it in anger, there is always that risk. It is very difficult to control our behavior when we are angry. And if you've given yourself permission to hit or spank your child, there is a risk of overdoing it in anger. Close your eyes again and imagine being hit. And this time imagine the hitter is really angry. How does that feel? Isn't that scary? Finally, when your child grows up, do you want your adult child to think it is okay to be hit by anybody? How can you teach your child it is not okay to be hit by anyone while you're hitting him or her? Too many people allow themselves to be hit by partners, and too many people hit their partners. Does spanking play a role in that dynamic? Is spanking likely to help reduce violent behaviors by the child when he or she grows up, or to increase violent behaviors? Use logic when you answer that question. So spanking may get immediate results at the cost of your child's sense of security, your child's learning anything of value, your child's self-esteem and sense of well-being. And spanking is very unlikely to get any real, long-term changes of behavior, while it is likely to teach nothing more than hitting is the way to solve problems and the bigger person gets to rule. And it may result in violent behaviors throughout a lifetime, at least to some degree. What to do then instead? How do you discipline if you do not spank? Consequences. Consequencing is effective, and when it's effective, and that's when it's consistent. That's what I'm trying to say. When it's consistent and it teaches valuable lessons while instilling a sense of confidence and empowerment in your child. Consequencing allows your child to maintain their dignity and to learn from misbehaviors. However, consequencing is an art and a science. It only works as the consequences are fair and closely related to the offense as possible. For instance, grounding your child for every bad behavior will lose its effectiveness. Grounding your child for a reasonable amount of time for coming home late and not letting you know where he or she was is effective, although it may not be effective on every child. Some children do not mind being grounded. Well, in that case, you find the consequence that the child will not like as closely related to the offense as possible. Consequencing requires several discussions on it alone, and discussions on various topics will include consequencing. I will be addressing this in many future discussions. For now, understand that to be effective, consequencing must be A, consistent, B, known in advance. It doesn't work to all of a sudden give a consequence for a behavior your child's been getting away with. A warning is required. If you do that again, this will happen. Tell them the consequence. C, consequences must be related to the offense as possible. D, they must be fair and reasonable. Grounding for a week because your child's 10 minutes late after curfew is extreme and will not work. E, consequences must be firm but not rigid or wishy-washy. Consequences and questioning. Putting the child in a corner to think about what they did or on the stairs to sit there and think about what they did is useless. They do not yet have the reasoning power to fully analyze their actions and what will happen if. Timeout should not be a consequence. It should be a cooling off period for parents and children. When I call a timeout, I need to go cool off, and I will come back to deal with this when I'm not angry anymore. When my child needs a timeout, he or she needs to go cool off and come back to deal with this when he or she is not angry anymore. Nothing useful gets accomplished in anger, and an angry child cannot hear anything you're trying to say. This issue, too, is for another discussion. Rather than a timeout for a child to think about what he or she did, consequences and questions. When everyone is done being angry, dealing with the anger will be addressed in future discussions, but in the consequences and questioning is the most effective form of discipline. Consider your child's misbehavior as a teaching opportunity. For example, when the candy bar hit the mom in the head, if she is angry, first she needs to call for a time out for herself and get past her anger. Take a few deep breaths. Whoa, baby, time out. I'm so angry. I just got hit with a candy. Oh, I'm so angry. And then when she's calm, she can ask the 4-year-old, what made you throw candy at me? Do you think that's going to work to let me get you to have candy? How do you think I felt when you threw candy at me? How would you feel if someone threw candy at you? Do you want me to feel that way? What do you think will happen the next time you want candy? Do you think I'm going to want to give it to you after you hit me with it this time? Of course you're angry. I wouldn't let you have the candy. If I wanted candy and I couldn't have it, I'd be angry too. But what could you do instead of throw it at me? What do you think you could have done? And let the child answer. You'll be surprised at some of the answers you get. So will you do that next time? If you throw candy at me again, you will not get candy after that for 2 times. When I would have given you candy, when it's your candy time, I will get your candy instead. And I'll eat the candy you throw at me then and there. Next time you're angry, you can tell me you're angry, and we can talk about it. And then when it's time for you to have candy, I'll give it to you. But if you hit me with it, I'll eat it myself, and I'll get to eat your candy for 2 more times after that. Now, this takes a lot longer than spanking, but it teaches. It teaches empathy. It teaches a child to think and to learn. It teaches a child how to behave differently and how to process what natural consequences in the real world would be. Hitting each other to solve problems hopefully will not be a real world, outside of your home consequence for your child. Granted, most of us baby boomers were spanked and not terribly damaged because of it. Perhaps not damaged at all. Still, do you know if and how much better you might be if you were disciplined differently? Parents who have worked with me on consequencing have achieved seriously 100% success with it when they apply it according to the rules of consequencing mentioned above. Not always at the first attempt, since not all things work with all children, but when we discover the child's Achilles heel, the thing the child will do anything for, and when we design a custom-made consequencing and questioning process for the family, and it's applied properly, it always works. So work on identifying consequences for misbehaviors and putting them in place for future misbehaviors with your children, and work on sitting and questioning your child about what's made them do their behavior. What could you do instead? And what do you think is going to happen if you do this? And what will happen if you do that? And you're training your child to be a thinker, and you're empowering your child and helping your child to continue to feel valued and competent, and you're preserving your child's dignity. Subscribe now if you haven't already for ongoing support, information, and strategies for powerful parenting. Please share your thoughts, suggestions, and feedback at Lenny's Life Lessons on Facebook. Follow me at Lenny's Life Lessons on Twitter, and visit my website, lennylondon.com. And thank you for joining me. I hope you'll join me again.